there, guys. This is Tara from Be Well Healthy Living. Today I'm going to be talking about sunscreen. I'm going to be talking about the ins and outs and why I personally have chosen not to wear sunscreen on a daily basis. So stay with me and let's go into detail. First of all, I have to say I am not a doctor, and so all of the views that I am going to be talking about are expressly opinions held by myself. They do not represent any of the companies that I represent as well. So just wanted to get that out there. So if you do have any questions about sunscreen issues, feel free to consult your doctor and talk to your doctor about it. However, I do recommend that you do your own research about it first before you do discuss it with your doctor. And let's get into it. So what I'm going to say and what I'm going to talk about kind of goes against conventional thought, because everybody kind of the common thought is, oh, if you're going to go outside in the sun, you got to protect your skin. You got to wear sunscreen. You got to watch out for the sun because the sun is bad. The sun is going to give us cancer. And there's a lot of fear based around the sun. So what I'm going to be saying is kind of the opposite, and it goes against conventional wisdom. So nowadays, even just taking a look across the information that's out there in the wide world of internet land, you're going to have some doctors that are actually going to tell you that sun exposure can be a really good thing. Then you're going to have other people that are going to say, no, stay away from the sun. I've actually heard one dermatologist say that she wears sleeves whenever she's out in the sun, and she protects her face even in the car when she's driving. And I'm like, talk about obsessive with it. I get it. You don't want to, you're concerned about your aging, or you're concerned about skin cancer. But I think that when you go to extremes like that, it sounds a little bit crazy. So what I'm going to be talking about is a little bit more balance and kind of demystifying some of the issues when it comes to sunscreen. And I might be talking a little bit about things that maybe you haven't heard before, a little bit of unconventional wisdom, but I want to break it down. So I think the hard part is about this is that there's no single formula. You can't say, oh, well, you need this exact amount of sun exposure every day, or you can be outside, because there's a lot of factors at play. No particular human being is the same. So a lot of factors are going to play in, such as what is your skin color? Do you have darker skin? Do you have lighter skin? That's going to really make a big difference to how much sun exposure you can have. Where are you located? What is your elevation? How close are you to the equator versus how far away from the equator you are? That's another big one. Hormonal balance is another thing. So hormonal balance, sometimes if your hormones are out of whack, that can have some effects on your skin. So that might affect the amount of sun exposure you have. Another thing is age. That's another thing. So it's hard to put a one size fits all approach to how much sun time in the sun you can have, because it's going to be different for everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a little bit about everything that I just said about the location, your skin color, and everything, so you can make a better decision for yourself. So like if you're a dark skinned person in the Pacific Northwest, you might need a lot more sun exposure versus a fair skinned person. If you're living in a southern environment and you're fair skinned, you would need very little because it's going to absorb pretty quickly. So things like that, I'm going to demystify that a little bit later in the video. So currently vitamin D deficiency is at pandemic levels, which means that so many people have it, and it's an issue. Now I've tried researching the amount of numbers. It's a little bit vague. I've come to about 42% on average are deficient. Now I have a feeling that those numbers are going to be a lot more because most everybody is vitamin D deficient nowadays. And so why that's important is because vitamin D does so much for our health. We need vitamin D. If we don't get vitamin D, we can get sick, because vitamin D is essential for our immune system. It is an immune boosting vitamin, and so we need that. So immune boosting, it's hormone balancing. It helps provide adrenal support, helps balance glucose levels, and there's a whole host of things. But one of the biggest things, and this sounds crazy because you're told to be afraid of the sun, vitamin D is necessary for preventing cancer. So that's 17 types of cancer, and one of those cancers is actually skin cancer. So believe it or not, you need vitamin D to prevent skin cancer. Doesn't sound like an oxymoron, right? It kind of sounds like the exact opposite. So it's extremely important. And anybody who has had vitamin D deficiency and has gotten tested by their doctor will know you're going to feel lethargic, you're going to feel depressed, you're going to feel you're just going to feel out of sorts. You're going to feel achy. You're going to feel, I think I said depression already. You're just, it's not a good thing to be vitamin D deficient. Seasonal affective disorder. Many in the Pacific Northwest have seasonal affective disorder and have to have lamps to give themselves that sun because there's not a lot of sun in that area because it's a lot of it's overcast. People spend time inside because it's raining. It's a more northern elevation. So seasonal affective disorder is also basically, if you've experienced that, that is a marker of vitamin D deficiency as well. So, but I'm going to keep coming back to vitamin D deficient. Vitamin D is so important because it helps your immune system. It helps build you up, and it's connected to so many different systems in your body, make strong bones. So having so much of the population deficient in vitamin D leaves us wide open for chronic disease. Now that's an issue, and it's easily corrected by just getting some extra sun. So 50 to 90% of our vitamin D actually comes from our skin. So it comes, very little of it comes from food. So you can get some from egg yolks, fatty fish, fortified dairy, some stuff like that. But that's such a small portion. The best way to get vitamin D is actually having sun exposure, letting your skin absorb the sun. So that's the best thing that you could possibly do for your immune system health, for your total body health, is to allow your skin that time in the sun. So vitamin D deficiency is actually worse in the Black population and then the Hispanic population as well. So basically, the darker their skin is, the more issues there are with vitamin D deficiency. And this has nothing to do with socioeconomic issues. This is not that at all. This has to do with science and basically the amount of melanin that's in the skin. So melanin is basically what makes the skin darker. So the darker your skin is, the more melanin you have. Melanin is a natural protector of the sun. So the more melanin that a person has in their skin, the darker they will be. Melanin protects from those sun rays so they can have longer sun exposure. Now it's interesting because if you take a look at the Earth's map and you look at where the equator is, if you look at the equator, generally people who live or people who have ancestral roots where the equator was or the equator is are going to have darker skin. So, and the more north you go, people are going to have lighter skin. It's kind of nature's way of adapting to give more protection and for those who need it. So for people who are near the equator, who are getting more sunlight, more intense sunlight as well, they are going to need, they're going to be able to be out in the sun more often because their skin naturally protects them. If you're in a more northern climate where you're going to get less sun because the sun's direct rays, you're not going to get as intensely, you don't need as much sun. So it's a great example of how the adaptation of our body and our location of where we are living at in the world, how that actually can help tell us how much time we can have in the sun. So the best way to get this magical vitamin D is through our skin. And the funny thing is that if you look back through the thousands and thousands of years that the human species has been walking this planet, we didn't have sunscreen all those years ago. So what did our ancestors do? I mean, they lived without sunscreen and they were fine. They survived. And in fact, their skin adapted to the location that they were at. So it's kind of interesting that now we have this thing called sunscreen, and now it's like, oh, now we have to have it. So a lot of it's a marketing thing, but as you see, as we talk about the next subject about what's actually in the sunscreen, that's an interesting subject too. So let's talk about sunscreen and what's actually in it. So there's two different types of sunscreens. There's what's called chemical sunscreens and physical sunscreens. Chemical sunscreens are the most common sunscreen product that you're going to find. So if you go to the grocery store, if you go to Target, Walmart, wherever, and you want to buy a sunscreen, I'd probably say about 95% of the products that you pick up will have a chemical sunscreen. Now, the way that chemical sunscreens work, there are different types of chemicals and they will absorb those sun rays. So a physical type of sunscreen, which is titanium dioxide or zinc oxide, are mineral based. It's 100% natural, and those work to actually as a physical barrier and they block the sun's rays. A little bit of modern technology have made it a little bit better, a little bit more absorbable nowadays, but even still, the way that they actually work, one is more of a block and one is more absorption, has more absorption. So the absorption method, the chemical sunscreen method, is what the majority of sunscreens are in the market. A lot of people like them because they go on smooth, they go on easy, you don't see them, they come in spray form. I go to amusement parks quite often, and I'm always seeing parents just spray their kids with these, toxic chemical sprays. And I'm like thinking, no, please don't put that on your children because it is terrible. So some of the ingredients that you're going to find in those common sunscreens, there's avobenzene, homosalate, octisalate, and octocrylene. I might have said those a little bit off, but those are the four main ones. There have some that have actually been discontinued for use from majority of the modern products just because there is so much controversy about it. So they've gone to, those are the four main ones that you're going to find on the majority of the products that you're going to see out there. So all four of those ingredients are endocrine disruptors. All four of them. None of them are good for you, and all four of them are extremely toxic. So endocrine, they disrupt the endocrine disruption. They can basically cause mitochondrial dysfunction, and they can cause metabolic disorders. So there's a lot of problems with those. Now, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because here your skin needs vitamin D. You need to be able to absorb those sun's rays on your skin to be able to produce vitamin D. That's your body's natural way of making vitamin D. So you're like, okay, great. We go out in the sun, we absorb vitamin D, but we're told that the sun is our enemy. So we need to block the sun, right? We need to be fearful of the sun. And so now we're going to cover it up. So now we're not only, we're not allowing the sun to absorb our skin and produce that precious vitamin D, but now we're adding insult to injury and adding those toxic chemicals, which will actually make it even worse. So putting on a chemical sunscreen is the worst thing that you can do. Now, if you're a fair-skinned person and you want to go outside for a long period of time, yeah, you don't want to burn. That's the key, is keeping your skin from burning. You want just enough where you're going to absorb it, but you never want to burn, because that's where you can get into having issues with skin issues. So if you are going to use sunscreen, always, always, always choose the natural mineral version and make sure that there are no chemical sunscreen in it. The only thing that you want as a sun protector will be zinc oxide and titanium dioxide. Those are the only two that are generally recognized as safe, and you can put it on and it will protect you. And it actually, believe it or not, zinc oxide as a mineral actually has some anti-inflammatory effects just as a topical alone. So there's some great natural brands that do. Just make sure though, because again, the front of the packaging can be deceptive. Sometimes it'll say natural, and while it might have one of those two ingredients, it'll still mix it with the other chemical sunscreens in it. So just make sure that you are looking for a proper sunscreen that has mineral sunscreen only and no chemical sunscreen. Another thing that sometimes I like to tell people too is, if you are concerned about aging, because some people say, oh, well, the sun will make me age faster. Well, then wear a mineral sunscreen on your face and nothing on your body, and let the sun absorb the skin. Let the sun absorb into your body's skin, and so protect your face. So that's another way. It's kind of a happy compromise that way. Although it still is best to spend time out in the sun, even without sunglasses. So that way those sun's rays could actually get, you could actually have it through your eyes as well. So it's actually best to be out in the sun without sunglasses. So what about skin cancer? So it's interesting that we need vitamin D to prevent cancer, including skin cancer, but yet we're told not to be exposed to the sun because that can cause skin cancer. So what's the truth, really? So the key is just don't let yourself burn. So if you're out in the sun, you want to absorb some sun, but never let your skin burn. And that's going to be different for everybody. I can't say exactly how much time that's going to be for one person versus another. Although I can say that generally, if you start probably about 15 minutes to a half hour, somewhere in there, is going to be the bare minimum. So if you're an extremely fair skinned person who tends to burn easily, the minimum amount of exposure to sunlight would be enough for you. And then you build up that tolerance. So maybe you might start out in just a little bit, but if you have daily sun exposure, just let yourself get little by little by little, and always, feel it out. You're going to have to pay attention, but never let your skin burn. If you are a dark skinned person, you naturally have the ability to be out in the sun longer without burning. So you're going to have to be out in the sun a lot longer than the fair skinned person. So it's just science. It's just about the amount of melanin that you have. And that's why a lot of times the black population has a higher vitamin D deficiency, is because they're just not spending enough time in the sun as to what their skin dictates that they need. So the average American lifestyle right now is we live inside, we're sedentary, we don't go outside, we're told to be fearful of the sun. So that is universal across the board. The issue is with darker skin, you do need to spend more time in the sun. So be aware of that. Also be aware of where you're at in the equator. And have you ever noticed, like, sometimes you'll go on vacation and you notice that you're in a different environment and you're like, wow, the sun was really intense. Like if you travel like to Mexico, or if you're in Florida versus like, somewhere further north, or wherever you're at and wherever you might travel, have you ever noticed that you might get more sun a little bit differently that you do in other areas? It's kind of interesting how sometimes that goes to the northern latitude of where you're at. I've even found a connection to the amount of humidity in the air. So if there's more humidity, like you're in a versus a drier climate, if you're more in a desert type of climate versus one like Florida, perhaps, where there's a lot more humidity, that is also going to affect the way that the sun will affect the skin. So that's a factor. Your hormonal balance also is a tough one too, because let's talk about something a little bit of a side note right now. Melasma. Melasma is the pigmentation of the skin where you're going to see like your face has a darker pigmentation spots. I notice a higher prevalence of that in people who have some melanin, so not quite dark, but not quite fair, although it can happen in the fair, but usually in the Hispanic population gets it quite a bit, I've seen, where there is, especially women who are a little bit older, but it can happen with women that are a little bit younger. It can happen during pregnancy. It's very common to get these dark, they call them pregnancy masks, where you're going to get them the darker skin during pregnancy. But the big elephant in the room is hormonal birth control. If you're on a hormonal birth control, I highly recommend you to get off of it, but that's another subject for another day. But I will tell you, just in relation to how the sun affects your skin, that if your hormones are out of balance, if your hormones are not normal, that's why I'm going to say, like, if you're pregnant is another time, you really need to be careful about how much sun exposure hits your face, just because of that melasma. It can happen. And the tough thing about the melasma is that it is heat sensitive, so you can get it even in a sauna. So it's not necessarily direct sun rays, but actually the heat that can actually stimulate it. So I always recommend, you can wear a hat. If you are pregnant and going in the sun, maybe get it on your body. That's fine, because you still it's so important to get that vitamin D exposure. But if your hormones are just not what they normally are, through pregnancy or hormonal birth control, or maybe you're kind of going through some menopausal issues or something like that. So just be aware of what your hormone status is, because you might want to have a little bit more protection. You still want to wear, if that's the case, you still want to wear a mineral sunscreen to protect yourself as much as possible, but do be aware that heat itself will trigger it. Remember, the sun is not our enemy. The sun is a beautiful life giver in the sky, and everything we have on our planet exists because the sun provides growth. The sun provides life. So just as we are part of nature and part of this beautiful planet, we have adapted to be able to utilize the sun for our own health benefits. So, the best way to protect yourself from skin cancer, which you're told to be afraid of the sun, the best way to protect yourself is to be balanced. Eat an anti inflammatory diet, eat as healthy as possible, take care of yourself, and boost your immune system in everything you possibly can do. But remember that you do need that vitamin D to help prevent you against other illnesses and even cancer itself. So don't shy away from it. So again, let's kind of go back to the reason why I don't wear sunscreen is that I have been vitamin D deficient before, and it is not um, it was all these weird illnesses, like I just didn't feel good, tired, lethargic, all of those things. And I did live in the Pacific Northwest for 15 years. And when I moved to a sunny climate after those 15 years, it was and had regular sun exposure, it was like I felt giddy. I mean, it was like totally different. And so I'm a big believer. And I have had doctors tell me too, through the test, oh, you're vitamin D deficient. We need to get that up right away because you can get cancer. So we need to get you on a high dose prescription strength vitamin D. So most people, if they get tested, will find that they are vitamin D deficient. That's why I kind of say that 42%, like I said in the beginning. I have a feeling it's a lot higher than that. It's just really hard. It's really vague to get an actual number because I believe that a large majority of the people are vitamin D deficient. And those numbers I've seen are like some are lower, some are a little bit higher, some they're different. So but anyway, so yeah, so I let my skin do its natural job that it was designed to do, and that's absorb that beautiful sunshine, give me those moon boosting, the vitamin D, and I don't want to add any other toxic chemicals to my body. I don't want those endocrine disruptors to make myself sicker. So I avoid those. And again, remember, if you do want to do sunscreen, if you want to do baby steps on this, that's fine. That's actually, good. You just switch out your sunscreen, read the back of the labels, and look for the active ingredient. Make sure that none of those chemical sunscreens are in it. Make sure that you're only using a mineral sunscreen. So thank you so much. I appreciate you staying with me, and please like and subscribe and share. And that's all for now. Thank you. Bye-bye.